went back to school a little bit and kind of got up to speed with what was going on. On paper, it all looks linear, but it's never that straightforward. I've almost been forced out of the corporate world. So what we ended up doing was actually reacquiring Spotii back. The most powerful tool that Spotii has is actually its technology stack. But we also know that banks have never been really good at using that information.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Breaking Uneven podcast. We love to talk shop, uncover the beauty of failures, and play a few games. We're talking to the founder of Spotii, Anuscha Iqbal, today. Anuscha went from an Ivy League to a banking analyst to directly a managing director of an investment management company, after which she finally became her own boss with Spotii. Anuscha, is that a good summary of your journey so far?
Yes, with a lots of ups and downs in the middle, but yeah, sure, that you can. That's a good summary.
Perfect. So we'll kick off with a quick little game.
Cool. So what we like to do to kind of get the conversation started is play a game called the Twitter Pitch Challenge. Um, Twitter or X or Threads, whatever we might call it in today's world. But Twitter is known for its 280 character limit on every tweet, which makes it a little difficult to convey your thoughts. So it takes about 20 seconds to speak to 80 characters. And so what you need to do is explain to us Spotii in 20 seconds, but you also need to use one emoji and one hashtag. So do you have any questions or should we kick off the challenge?
Okay.
So I'll give you a countdown. So 3, 2, 1, go.
So Spotii is a buy now, pay later service provider that originally started off as a direct to consumer business and then has evolved into a white label solution where we're basically embedding finance and working with financial institutions to help them do that. That's my emoji.
And your hashtag?
Hashtag Spotii BNPL.
So unfortunately, you're like literally just half a second over the time, but that's fine. We still get the gist of it.
Yeah, it was a great description as well of like what Spotify stands for. But I guess like before we get more into that, like just a little bit more about like your journey. Like you've always kind of been in like the financial sector. Is that something that you've always wanted to do or something that drew you towards that?
Actually, no. When I started, my education was actually in engineering. So finance was something that I actually got into after graduating from school. So it was never a straight path, but I was good with numbers. And so, went down that road. And investment banking was a good way to kind of get familiar with a whole plethora of different financial tools and analytic capabilities. And then it was my move from New York to Dubai that caused me to slightly change from investment banking to private equity, but still using and learning all the tools that I had as an analyst. And then I took a break after about having worked in private equity for 10 years and spent that time actually re educating myself on what was happening in the fast moving world of fintech. It's not, this is a space that is constantly evolving and there's so much innovation that's happening. And so I actually went back to school a little bit and kind of got up to speed with what was going on. It was only post that I then worked with my co-founder to launch Spotii. Uh, so that was the sort of journey. It wasn't, on paper it all looks linear, but it's never that straightforward.
Yeah, so like you said, there were like a lot of ups and downs, and it looks linear, but it's like a curve, right? So, what would you say like is one of your dip in like up until Spotify?
Um, well, I think one of the most telling times in my professional career was when the private equity firm that I used to work for went into liquidation. There was an organization that I had been working for 10 years, and it was to sort of witness a very esteemed organization then close shop was quite difficult and challenging. And then to sort of pick yourself up from that experience, rebuild yourself into a new career, it was both exciting and quite daunting.
Oh, interesting. So tell me this: uh, you went to Wharton at UPenn. Was there something, during your time there that kind of drove you towards the financial world, or was it your want to get into this world that drove you there?
I mean, Wharton is a business school, so everything around it is geared towards putting you into the financial world. Like I said, though, when I first went to school, I went in, as an engineering student. Um, it was during my 4 years at Penn where I then shifted gears and ended up attending Wharton and then graduating from two schools at the University of Pennsylvania. And it was a lot of it was actually the people. I was just meeting interesting people who were very driven, and I found that to be quite exciting. I think most things and human beings are very social animals, right? And I think most decisions and choices that we make are usually driven by those social interactions. And so I think I would say the one thing that obviously stood out to me at Wharton was just the high caliber of people and their drive, which then just pushed me and drove me as well.
Interesting. And then what kind of, when you decided to come back, had you had any thought of sticking around in the US, trying to start something there? Did you always want to start something back in the MENA region?
No, so that was actually more personal. So I relocated from New York to Dubai in 2007. 2008, as we all know, was when the Great Recession hit, and it took many years for most of the world to recover. However, this part of the world kept growing, and so with that growth was just always new opportunities. And then on the personal side, you just kind of settle down, and I think at that point it just Dubai, the UAE became home, and so it just made a lot more sense to do something here versus going back um, and trying to do something in the US.
For sure. And I think like yeah, making those decisions in terms of like moving countries is not like the easiest. There's like a lot of like pros and cons that go into like making that move. But like I guess that was one move that you had to decide, but the second was also going from like corporate to like becoming an entrepreneur and starting your own thing. So like was there any like trigger point or something that really convinced you to like leave the corporate world and enter the entrepreneurial world, or was it like a not planned transition?
No, that was a very conscious decision actually. And the reason was I had spent, as I said, quite a number of years already in the corporate world. And when my previous firm went into liquidation, it kind of gave me a moment to pause, say, okay, now I do have this opportunity now. I've almost been forced out of the corporate world. So what do I do with that? I could obviously have gone back and gotten another job, but I just felt that it was a it was a good moment in my career with this unnatural pause that already happened. And so I just wanted to use that to try and do something different. And again, going back to wanting to just push myself, challenge myself, the idea was that if this is something that I should try, whether I fail or succeed, it will not, that would be on me. And I wanted to challenge myself and see how it would turn out. So it was a very conscious decision to try and do something and build a business on my own.
And yeah, so like now coming to like Spotii and what it is now, how are Spotii and the NymCard interlinked?
So Spoti's journey is quite interesting. We launched the business in early April 2020, me and my co-founder. Um, we were able to grow it, and we received a strategic investment from a larger buy now pay later company out of Australia in December of 2020. So a few months after we had launched it, we received a strategic investment, and the group had bought a minority stake. Actually, but within 3 months, so by March of 2021, they put a proposal to acquire the entire company. So within about a year and a half of launching the business, we actually ended up selling it to a larger buy now pay later company that wanted to come and grow its operations in the Middle East. And Spotii was supposed to be there, operating subsidiary here in this part of the world. However, in around middle of 2022, when the financial markets turned again, particularly in the fintech space, the business that we had sold Spotii to decided that they wanted to actually exit the Middle East. So all of this is happening in a very short period of time. But from my perspective, from my co-founder's perspective, we thought that there's still a lot of potential, both in the company and in the region and in the space overall. So what we ended up doing was actually reacquiring Spotii back from the individuals that we'd sold it to. And what the most powerful tool that Spotii has is actually its technology stack. So once we had retrieved that IP back, once we had the tech stack back with us, we wanted to pivot the business model from being a direct-to-consumer business to being a white label solution, which basically meant that whether you're a financial institution, whether you're a retailer, a bank, if you want to offer buy now, pay later to your customers, then we can power that technology stack for you under your brand. So we sort of made this shift in early 2023. And that was around the same time that we came across NymCard. NymCard was already in the business of engaging with the likes of the banks and financial institutions because they were already offering white labeled credit card issuing. And so it just sort of made sense for Spotii to, and the product that we were building, which was more credit based, to come under the broader Nym umbrella. So about a few months ago, I think it was June, end of May, mid-June, where we ended up then transferring the technology stack from Spotii to NymCard. So now the Spotii platform is one of the products that Nym offers.
That's quite. I mean, it's now I see what you mean by the ups and downs and the entirety of the journey. But coming to the core of Spotii, which is the BNPL model, which has had a lot of debate over the last 2 years, and I think most people's view on it is BNPL is dead, long live BNPL. Like there's both sides of it. So what is it that makes you believe in that model as a whole, whether it's B2C, B2B, whatever it might be? What drives you towards that?
No, I think it's part and parcel of how everything is being digitized, right? Simply put, credit is something that's been around since banking was invented, right? I mean, this was the basis and the foundation on which banking was started. So what BNPL is doing effectively is digitizing. It's making it easier for people to get that credit, especially people who not that people are not eligible for it, but people who may have difficulty accessing it. And what also works in favor of the consumer is that the charges, the costs, the fees, etc., are significantly lower than any of the other banking products out there, right? The whole idea is that the retailer or the merchant will end up paying for the service so that the consumer doesn't get charged as long as they're paying it on time. A lot of the detractors of BNPL will say that you're adding to the debt burden. A lot of the detractors will say that you're not doing a proper assessment. You're giving out credit to people who shouldn't receive credit. But that's if all the BNPL companies were giving out credit to people who didn't have credit, were not eligible for credit, there would just be lots of losses, and those businesses would fold. So what people miss out is that actually the more sophisticated, the more successful BNPL players actually do very strong credit assessment and risk assessment of the consumers that they bring on board. They just do it in a different manner. And so somebody who maybe might be new to the UAE, doesn't have a great history, may not be able to get the loan from the bank. But given their profile, given their background, they could potentially be able to purchase the goods on BNPL. So, I think there's a lot of merit to it, and I think it's just a smarter way of providing credit, which has been around for generations.
Yeah, I think what you said about credit being around since forever. It it also exists in a B2B environment, right? There's an unsaid BNPL there, which is, for example, if I'm buying a service from another company, they raise an invoice, and then I have a company policy of paying it 15 days or up to 30 days later, and that is kind of, to a certain extent, an unstructured BNPL. But do you think there could be a market for structuring that side of transaction as well? Like, for example, businesses apply for um, credit notes and credit lines from banks all the time. So kind of structuring the BNPL side of it.
Yeah, 100%. By the way, there are companies that are doing that already. And BNPL is an interesting word. Buy now, pay later. Yes, it's catchy, and but effectively it's instant credit, right? And that
Yes.
instant credit can come in any shape or form. And BNPL doesn't also necessarily have to look and feel similar. Like, not everybody who provides that instant credit is doing it in 3 monthly installments with zero fees, right? What's interesting about BNPL is not the credit product itself, which can actually be structured in whatever tenure you want, whatever fee structure you want, whatever you want to do it for B2C, B2B, it doesn't matter. What's more interesting about it is how, again, going back to digitizing that journey, can you digitally onboard the creditor, as in, can you digitally onboard your consumer or the business that's coming on board? Can you digitally and quickly, mind you? So it's not, it's not a process that takes weeks or months. It's minutes. Okay, so can you digitally onboard them? Can you assess them? Can you do the risk analysis on them? Can you do your fraud checks? All of that within minutes, and then provide them the credit. Right. So yes, completely agree with shape changing the way that BNPL is used, and there's a ton of use cases out there.
Interesting. And I think actually I want to go back to uh what you said in terms of reacquiring a Spotii. Like, I think I've never heard that, like selling your company so quickly and then buying it back. So like, just to, what was that process? What was it like? Yeah, what was the thought process of like buying your company back? Was there any thought in like just starting a new company altogether and letting that go, or was it just like, okay, we want to get this back?
Um, no, there was a lot of debate. It was both in the original sale process, in the repurchase, in the sale to NIM. There was always a debate, right? And I'm fortunate enough to have a strong co-founder, and we kind of have the ability to go back and forth, and we challenge each other in terms of our logic of doing A versus B. And that's really important as well, right? You need to have that sort of partner that you can communicate with, because these decisions are they are complex, and you need to be able to think through all of the iterations. Um, for for me, the thought process really was ultimately the faith in what we had built. So we were very confident about, like I said, the market opportunity, but we were even more confident that we've actually built a very nice product. We've actually got a very cool tech stack. And so both me and my co-founder then did agree that there is definitely value in this. So if somebody else doesn't see the value, but we see the value, then it just makes sense for us to take ownership of that and then drive a way to realize that value.
For sure. And I think yeah, like it happened pretty quickly in like terms of like timeline, right? Like 1.5 years in is also pretty quick to find like, for someone to acquire your business and then like coming back. So I'm pretty sure like those debates were like pretty consistent and not like spread apart. So that could also put like tension. Was there any yeah, really like strong opposing views between you and your co-founder during that process? Or were you all on the same page for most of
No,
it?
like I said, we do challenge each other. It's never just you. you have to present your case logically and with conviction. So yeah, it was. We definitely had a number of back and forths. And I think anybody who's been on that sort of entrepreneurial journey or founder journey and has a partner will tell you that, you actually probably don't want someone who thinks like you or does the same things as you. You actually
Yeah.
want a good partner is somebody who will challenge you. A good partner is somebody who will make sure that all of the different decision trees have been thought through and things like that, right? And that in itself will then create a little bit of friction. But you have to have faith and trust in that the challenge is coming from a position of trying to enhance the decision and not simply as a challenge, right? And if you have that underlying understanding, then it's actually a constructive debate, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, we've had many conversations like in our previous episodes about like co-founder dynamics and how it turns out. And I think the general overall conclusion for us has been that arguments are not. It's not like a good dynamic is not a lack of arguments. It's the ability to find the right end to an argument. But coming to the you mentioned that you all purchased back the IP, which means that you really believed in your proprietary tech stack. I want to know, so let's take general bankers, like I'm talking the likes of Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, and all of those. They've got like years and I mean decades of historical data which they can use to build their AI ML models, whereas Spotii began in 2020. So any kind of new data collection would have only started then. And how much would you say that puts you at a disadvantage in terms of the extent to which you can build your model?
Yeah, but you can take that question, keep it a much broader, right? Why do fintechs exist at all? If you banks have all the resources, they've got a lot
Yeah.
more money. They theoretically have, especially places like JP Morgan, have massive tech teams, right? So why do fintechs come about? Why do fintechs even flourish? And generally they do because they're doing something different. Yes, banks have a plethora of data and information, but we also know that banks have never been really good at using that information. And it wouldn't be surprising though that a bank who and the world is also changing, right? All of these use cases and what is it that you're going to do with this information? It's all coming up, but these ideas are coming up from the fintechs. Yes, eventually maybe a bank will copy it and they might be more successful. But the original IPs are coming up from startups, are coming up from small businesses. And so I think that's where the strength lies. I think the strength lies in startups to innovate and innovate quickly versus larger banks.
Yeah, and I think there's also some merit to the fact that, for example, if you've got, let's say, 30 years of data versus 3 years of data, with the 3 years, you reach about 85, 90% success rate, whereas with 30 years, you reach 98 because you're never going to get to 100. And so if the model can still hold its ground with an 85, 90% rate, you still have a successful tech stack there. Um, Fair enough. So with that, let's go to our next challenge, which is called Two Lies, One Truth. And so basically, you understand a little more about your journey. What we'll do is you need to give us three statements, amongst which two are false statements and one is true. These can be achievements or challenges or a mix of both. And we kind of have to guess which is the truth amongst the three.
Let's see. But I've already been talking about my history and my career, so you guys have the advantage. So you know where it's. So statement one: I grew up in Pakistan, and that shaped how I. That obviously had a strong influence on how I view the world and what I think my role in the world should be. Um, Statement two, one of the most exciting things about launching the business was the fact that I launched it during COVID, and my children were locked at home, and that really helped get them involved in the entire entrepreneurial journey, which I'm very grateful for, despite all the downsides of COVID. And statement three, um, I I enjoyed my corporate career more than my entrepreneurial career.
Okay, so you have made it really tough. So good job on that.
Yeah.
I think right off the bat, we can say that statement three is probably false because, I mean, I think any entrepreneur, if they really want to go back to the corporate world, they can choose to do that. Especially if you're as successful as Spotii is, so you easily have a way back in. So I don't think that one would be true. Amongst the first two, it's difficult, especially because there's
I,
emotions connected to it.
I'm leaning towards the second one. I think like launching during COVID is definitely difficult, but like yeah, having your kids home and getting them involved in setting up something and like also for them like having that exposure at a really young age is pretty cool. So I would say statement two is true, but like yeah, Anuj,
I'll
what?
go for statement one then, for the sake of difference.
Okay.
Statement two is true.
Okay. Yeah, I
That's
think
awesome.
that's cool.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah, to
actually
like get
it
them.
was it was interesting because they're so vested in the business, just because they were there from when it launched, and a lot of the team would be, the original team sat in my living room and, on my dining table when when we were doing it, and the kids were always around because schools were closed. And I'm actually very grateful for having being able to give them that exposure, and I think that really uh, got them excited potentially of doing their own business as well. And the other side is, they think their dad doesn't do anything, and the mom does all the work. So there's a plus side in that too.
I think it's like really cool for them to be involved in such a young age because like at the end of the day, like seeing it in the works is more exposure than anyone does have, and that's like more of the learning versus just like going to university. I mean, obviously that has its pros as well, but like just being influenced with something like this and seeing that so up close early on is pretty like it's gonna mold some sort of their life. So I think that yeah, I think they're lucky kids.
But is there like, so is there anything that comes because, the youngsters have a lesser understanding than experienced people of what not to do. And that sometimes leads to like what you would perceive as naive ideas that are actually just really good ideas. So in that process, did any such idea come about for Spotty, which was an idea from them, which you kind of tested and it actually grew into part of your business?
Not necessarily an idea, but they did. The whole concept for us was to keep everything very simple. So we wanted to. It always had to be explainable quickly. It had to be very obvious. So we would, my son especially was a good sounding board, because I'd throw a statement to him and say, "Does this make sense? Or what did you understand from it?" And if you couldn't understand it, then it meant like, maybe I need to simplify it even further. So it wasn't necessarily that we tried ideas from them, but they are a good sounding board. And also, yeah, but to be fair, they're quite young. So my son at the time uh, he was 10 and my daughter was 7. So they're young kids. But no, it's a good point though, that children see, or youngsters see the world differently, because they're not necessarily jaded by life's experiences, and so they, the you can always shoot for the stars. I do remember though, when my son making one statement which was very interesting, and we were he overheard a conversation where we were talking about integrating with the Apple Wallet, and for some reason I had a little bit of frustration in my voice, and he's like, Mom, if they're giving you a hard time, why don't you just grow Spotty and then and then buy Apple, and they'll do it. So I said, inshallah, one day. So I do see what you're saying in terms of they don't believe in limits, and that they for them anything is possible.
Yeah, oh my God. But I think even like yeah, 10 and 7, if you were able to explain like Spotii to a 10-year-old, a fintech company to a 10-year-old, that's also like incredible.
No, I think that in itself is a different kind of direction, right? Maybe not Apple, but you could be bought or buy another fintech company that has wallet integration, and that's like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just the fact that they just think so simply that sometimes you forget to do that. Um,
Yeah, so we're gonna play red flags. We are gonna give you three hypothetical situations composed of two things that are going great and one that is not so great, which is the red flag. And you have to assume these statements to be true, and we've adapted these situations for you to pick which of these situations you would rather be in, and then tell us why. So, situation one, Spotii is working with 300 banks. You now have more than 5 million registered customers, but one of your models horribly miscalculated a month worth of credit decisions. Situation two, Spotii has grown 5x in the last year. The BNPL industry has seen its largest growth rate this year, but one of your competitors is taking the MENA region by storm. Situation three, Spotii has expanded to Europe with great success. You have a compelling offer for acquisition, but you personally are feeling really, really burnt out. So yeah, these are your three situations. You need to let us know which situation you would rather be in.
I think situation three.
Okay.
They're not easy choices, but yeah, situation three probably the best one because um, even if I'm feeling burnt out today, with an acquisition, that means that somebody can hopefully step in and take over in the future. And if being burnt out is the only red flag, that's something that I could probably handle for a little bit longer until that resolves itself. Um, yeah, so I think situation three.
Interesting. Yeah, I think like a lot of founders that we've seen throughout the process pick the company's benefit over theirs. And yeah, I think it's like interesting to see that as well, like across like different founders. But like you said, I think the burn out situation is more short term versus the rest would have a larger long term effect. So it's interesting to see what your thought process was behind that.
yeah, I think as a founder, you face burnout often, and then you like figure out when to step back until you face burnout again. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it is a problem that most founders are familiar with. Um, And yes, I think the reason why we kept the acquisition green flag in that bucket was to kind of have that link between the two. Um, but yeah, let's move on to our final segment. It is a very simple rapid fire. So we're gonna simple quick questions with 2 to 3 word answers,
Sure.
and we'll start now. So how many days of leave have you taken in the last year?
So given I sold it to Nim, I actually had time off 2 weeks.
Okay, that's a healthy balance. What was your proudest moment with Spotty?
When we bought it back from the people we had sold it to.
If you could go back in time and start Spotty 3 years earlier than you did, would you?
Yes.
What was your biggest sacrifice to make Spotty possible?
Sacrifice is a strong word, I guess, but I think it would have been. It's usually just it's time, right? It's time.
Yeah,
Time.
time, hobbies, etc. How often do you personally use BNPL services?
Zero.
What is the one time you felt like you let Spotty down?
When the original company that bought us chose to exit the market.
What would you ever retire?
Not anytime soon. Uh, eventually,
All right, so last few
maybe.
questions. Eventually, maybe. Cool. So last few questions, books or podcasts?
Books. Sorry, guys.
iPad or notebooks?
Notebooks.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Night owl.
Do you prefer Threads or Twitter?
Threads.
Interesting. And what's your favorite social media?
Probably Instagram.
Interesting. So I think we started seeing a bit of a trend. Um, when someone chooses books over podcasts, they also end up choosing a book, and then they're usually a morning person as well. I don't know. I feel like we're seeing that kind of trend,
Yeah.
um, which is interesting. But so that concludes the rapid fire segment, but we're not yet at the end, quite at the end of the conversation. So what we do towards the end is ask each guest to ask our next guest a question. Neither knows which is which. So we'll first ask you your question, and then you can ask a question to our next guest.
Okay.
So your question is,
what's our 30 years looks like? Like, what that end thing that you want to achieve. Like, for example, for me, there is a reason that you are living life with. So I think, what's your life motive?
It's a good question. Um, that's the other thing about being a founder. You're always, yes, you have a bigger vision of the business, and you have somewhere forward to think about it and go, but you're also very much in the moment. So 30 years is a very long time. um, I think, but if I were to look at that span of time, the answer would be a little bit more generic. I think it's just about having uh, having strong relationships with people, maintaining mental health, remaining fit, and continue to see the business grow.
that's awesome. I think, yeah, it is quite a, introspective, because when you look 30 years beyond, you kind of think more personally also, like where I want to be rather than just where I want to be with the business. Um, and if whenever you're asked what do you like, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, it's usually very career led
Yeah.
as an answer. But yeah, that brings us to the end of our conversation. And Anusha, thank you so much for joining us. I think it was an absolute uh, it was a roller coaster. We went from personal journey to Spotii to talking really into BNPL. It was just a very nice, versatile conversation.
No, thank you guys. Thank you for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for having me.